WNBA owners are moving along with business. They're not entertaining these games with the WNBPA. We got to break this down. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. Let's get right into this here first. The WNBA issued a statement. All right.
January didn't just arrive with another deadline on the calendar. It detonated a reality bomb inside the WNBA power structure that the Players Association clearly wasn't prepared for. While the union believed silence, pressure, and public messaging would freeze the league into submission, ownership responded with something far more dangerous: momentum. Without drama, without headlines, and without asking for permission, the league made it clear that basketball operations were continuing on schedule, and in doing so exposed the central miscalculation of this entire standoff. The union assumed that a missing CBA meant paralysis. The owners knew it meant leverage. Under the protections of U.S. labor law, the league is not required to shut down simply because negotiations stall, and instead of treating that status quo period as a waiting room, ownership turned it into a weapon. General managers were instructed to move forward. Free agency frameworks were activated, expansion timelines stayed intact, and internal conversations accelerated behind closed doors. This wasn't defiance, it was confidence rooted in legal reality. The message was unmistakable: the league does not stop functioning because the union wants more time, more percentages, or more symbolism. Basketball is still a business, rosters still need to be built, and players still need contracts. That moment shattered the illusion of player-side control, because leverage is never about who feels morally justified, it's about who can keep operating when the other side applies pressure. The union's public-facing strategy relied heavily on the idea that growth equals power, that rising ratings and increased attention automatically translate into negotiating dominance. Ownership responded by proving the opposite: growth without profitability does not equal control, and popularity does not override infrastructure. By proceeding with business as usual, the league didn't just call the union's bluff, it removed the bluff from the table entirely. The deadlines kept coming, the machinery kept turning, and suddenly the pressure reversed direction. Instead of owners fearing a stalled offseason, it became players facing uncertainty, delays, and the possibility of watching opportunity windows close while negotiations dragged on. That is the moment the leverage shifted, not because of rhetoric or ideology, but because one side understood the mechanics of power better than the other. Ownership didn't need to win the argument in public, they only needed to prove they could move forward without consent. And once that becomes clear in a labor negotiation, everything changes. The union can issue statements, invoke fairness, and appeal to future visions all they want, but none of that stops deadlines, expansion drafts, or the opening of free agency. The league demonstrated it can absorb delay far longer than individual players can absorb uncertainty, and that imbalance is decisive. This wasn't a negotiation breakdown, it was a strategic exposure. One side believed the system would collapse if they withheld agreement. The other side showed the system doesn't even slow down. And once that truth is revealed, the entire power dynamic tilts permanently, because in professional sports, the side that can keep the lights on always wins. And that's where the Players Association's entire strategy starts collapsing under its own weight, because once ownership proves the league can function without a finalized agreement, every additional day without a deal hurts players more than it hurts the system they're trying to pressure. The union gambled on the belief that visibility equals indispensability, that stars, headlines, and fan engagement would force ownership to blink first. But professional leagues are not powered by optics alone, they are powered by timelines, contracts, and operational continuity, and ownership controls all three. The moment general managers were told to proceed, the offseason stopped being theoretical and started becoming transactional. Conversations turned into evaluations, evaluations turned into priorities, and priorities turned into offers in waiting. That's how leverage quietly shifts, not in public debates, but in private rooms where decisions get made without press releases. Players waiting for a collective breakthrough suddenly found themselves facing individual crossroads. Do you wait for a better framework that may or may not arrive in time? Or do you secure your future now under rules that already exist? That question fractures solidarity faster than any internal disagreement ever could. Ownership understands this dynamic intimately. They know collective resolve weakens the moment personal stakes rise, and free agency is nothing but personal stakes. A player with a limited career window cannot afford to sacrifice guaranteed income today for abstract structural gains tomorrow, no matter how compelling the argument sounds on paper. And that reality makes time the most powerful bargaining chip in this entire dispute, a chip ownership holds exclusively. The union's rhetoric about long-term equity sounds strong until it collides with short-term survival, and in that collision, ideology loses every time. As deadlines stack up and off-season windows narrow, the pressure doesn't build on the league, it builds on players who need certainty, security, and contracts. Ownership isn't rushing because they don't need to. They're not scrambling because the machine is still running. Expansion teams will draft. Training camps will open. The season will start. The absence of a new agreement doesn't halt the calendar, it just exposes who can afford delay and who cannot. And that's the cruel, unavoidable truth now staring the Players Association in the face. They didn't misread the offer. They misread the balance of power. They assumed growth guaranteed leverage. They assumed momentum belonged to them. Instead, ownership demonstrated the only leverage that matters in professional sports, the ability to keep moving forward while everyone else is forced to react. Once that becomes clear, the negotiation isn't about winning anymore, it's about damage control. The most uncomfortable truth in this entire standoff is one nobody on the players' side wants to say out loud: principals don't sign contracts, and future promises don't cash checks. The union framed this fight as a moral reckoning, but ownership framed it as a business decision, and business always wins when deadlines arrive. While public statements fixated on revenue splits and long-term equity, the league responded with something far more tangible: numbers. Real salary structures. Immediate raises. Life-changing contracts placed directly in front of players who have spent years earning a fraction of their market value. That contrast matters, because when negotiations reach the point where theory collides with reality, reality doesn't blink. A seven-figure max isn't symbolism. A doubled salary floor isn't rhetoric. It's leverage disguised as generosity, and ownership knows exactly what it's doing. By offering massive increases now, the league forces every player into an individual decision that weakens collective resistance by design. Not because players are selfish, but because careers are short, injuries are permanent, and financial security cannot be postponed indefinitely. That's the structural flaw in the union's approach. It assumes unity can outlast necessity. It rarely does. The league doesn't need every player to agree, it only needs enough of them to choose certainty over ideology. And once that tipping point is reached, the negotiation stops being a standoff and starts becoming a surrender in slow motion. Ownership isn't ignoring player value, it's redefining it on its own terms, in real time, with contracts that make waiting feel reckless. The union wanted to slow the league down. To force change. Ownership sped the league up to force decisions. That is not accidental. That is strategy. And in professional sports labor battles, the side that controls urgency controls the outcome. And once urgency becomes the weapon, everything the union thought it controlled starts slipping away. The pressure no longer lives in press releases or social media support, it lives in locker rooms, agent calls, and late-night conversations about risk. Every passing day without a deal turns collective patience into individual anxiety, because uncertainty is not distributed equally in professional sports. Superstars can wait. Most players cannot. That imbalance is exactly what ownership is exploiting, not maliciously, but structurally. By allowing the offseason to move forward, the league forces the union to defend unity against reality itself. Expansion teams need players. Existing teams need clarity. Agents need direction. And players need answers. None of those needs pause for ideology. The union framed revenue sharing as a fight for everyone, but the immediate benefits tilt heavily toward the very top of the salary pyramid, leaving the majority to wonder how long they're supposed to hold the line while opportunities quietly pass by. Ownership understands this fragmentation risk better than anyone because leagues are built on it. They don't need to defeat the union publicly, they only need time to do its work privately. As more players confront the possibility of entering free agency under outdated terms or missing windows altogether, resolve weakens, narratives fracture, and leverage dissolves. This is how labor battles actually end, not with dramatic concessions, but with quiet acceptance when the cost of waiting becomes higher than the cost of agreeing. The league is not rushing toward a deal because it doesn't have to. It's letting the calendar apply pressure that no statement can counter. And when that pressure finally breaks through, it won't look like defeat, it will look like pragmatism. But make no mistake, the outcome will already be decided. At that point, the conversation stops being about fairness altogether and becomes purely about survival inside a system that does not pause for ideals. That is the moment every labor movement fears, because once pragmatism overtakes principle, the end is no longer dramatic, it's inevitable. Ownership doesn't need to threaten, punish, or posture. It only needs to remain still while the weight of reality presses down on the other side. Every unsigned contract, every unanswered agent call, every approaching deadline tightens the vice. The union can continue to speak in collective terms, but the league operates on individual consequences. Missed seasons can't be reclaimed. Short careers don't extend themselves. Windows close quietly in professional sports, and they rarely reopen. That is why ownership's calm matters more than any statement it could release. Calm signals control. Calm signals preparation. Calm signals that there is no emergency on their side of the table. And when one side negotiates without urgency while the other bleeds it, the outcome is predetermined. The league isn't asking players to give up their worth, it's daring them to define it against time itself. And time, unlike rhetoric, never negotiates. As the offseason advances and decisions solidify, the union's leverage doesn't explode in resistance, it erodes in silence. One signature at a time. One exception at a time. One temporary compromise at a time. That is how power reasserts itself, not loudly, not violently, but methodically. By the time a resolution arrives, it won't feel like a breakthrough. It will feel like a confirmation of what was already clear the moment the league decided to keep moving. This fight was never about who was right. It was about who could afford to wait.